the window has slammed shut, and we've done a tier list where I ranked every single signing on an individual basis. But that is slightly different to what we're doing today, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank all of the teams based on collectively. So the sort of factors I'm taking into account here is both who they bought in, but who they sold, and I'm going to decide who won the window and who lost the window. So the tiers we have are won the window, which I'll do like I did with the other tier list. I'll put clubs in there who could be contenders, and at the end of the video I'll choose one team that won the window, good window, average, poor, and then same thing for won the window, lost the window as well. I'll choose who had the worst window in the Premier League. So as I said, I am taking into account not just the incomings, I'm now taking into account the outgoings, and I'm going to base my rankings on many factors. How much did they pay for the people? Did they overpay on some of their guys? Did they get their top targets? Did they actually improve their team? Did they address the right areas? Did they, sell their players for good fees, get rid of deadwood, etc.? All of this stuff I'm going to factor in. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below who you think won the window and lost the window. But let's get straight into it. So, Manchester City. Manchester City is the first club here. So, Man City, in terms of their notable incomings and outgoings, so they made two incomings, which were Savinho and Gundogan, and then they sold quite a few players. Julian Alvarez was the big one, Cancelo as well left, Arthur Bellis left to Southampton, Sergio Gomez left, and a couple of youth players left as well. Now Manchester City, for me, are contenders for winning the window. I think when you look at the collective package, it's really impressive. They actually made net around 140 million profit, which is insane. The amount of money they got coming into the club was mental. Obviously the Alvarez sale did really well to get the money there. Cancelo did pretty decent there. Harwood Bellis, even they got 20 mil from Southampton. That's really good. They sell, as they always do, really, really nicely. The players they bought in were super cheap. Gundogan for a free transfer, and Savinho was like 20 odd million. Absolutely superb, and those are two players who I think are really going to have a big impact at Manchester City. The only thing that is maybe a negative is they did sell Alvarez for pretty good money, but Alvarez did actually play a decent amount last season, and they didn't really replace him, right? Like Savio is not really a direct replacement for Alvarez, so they did lose a kind of key player to the side, but I think for that money is pretty good. I like both their incomings, so they're definitely a contender for winning the window for me, and made a nice profit. Liverpool. So Liverpool have made two signings, Federico Chiesa and Georgie Mamardashvili. And then they, kind of similar to Man City, made a lot of outgoings. Quite a few youngsters left, like Fabio Carvalho, Sepp van der Berg, Bobby Clark, Badgerdick left on loan, a couple other guys left as well. Now, I mean Liverpool, for me, I think I'm gonna say, I think it's gonna have to be a poor window. I mean, they didn't make a signing for, like, until the dying embers of the window. Now look, I think they sold pretty decent, got some good money for Carvalho and Van der Berg. But the main thing really is, did they address their key areas? I don't think so. They needed a number 6. They did not get the DM. Obviously they chased Supermendy, couldn't get him. And then, look, I respect that they're not just sort of panic buying after that and just buying anyone. But still, it's an area of need which needed addressing, and they didn't address it. So for that reason, I think it's a poor window. Another centre back as well would have been nice, didn't get one. I like Chiesa and Mamardashvili, but Mamardashvili isn't going to help them now. Chiesa, has that starting 11 improved? No, not really. So yeah, I have to put it in poor window. Newcastle. So Newcastle have signed William Osulu, Odysseus Flacademos and Lloyd Kelly, and then he sold a couple of their young players. Notable ones were Yakuba Minter and Elliot Anderson. And for me, definite contenders for losing the window. Definite contenders. I mean, look, Lloyd Kelly, I don't mind that transfer on a free transfer. Cool. Decent little option at the back. Flacademos, I mean, that was basically a PSR deal, so whatever. And Osulu, yeah, whatever. But they sold Yakuba Minter, which is pretty bad business, I think, because we've already seen Minter early on. Looks like he would be more than capable of starting on the right wing for Newcastle. And Elliot Anderson as well has actually started life at Forest pretty good. Now, to be fair, the one good thing about their window is they didn't lose a big player like Bruno, Isak, Gordon. All of these guys stayed, which is good. But you look at the incomings. I mean, really, the only potential starter they signed is Lloyd Kelly, and they really needed somebody else. They chased Mark Gay, couldn't get him. They had alternatives, didn't get them either. You know, they were chasing Elanga late on the video, late in the window, couldn't get him. They didn't really, I don't think they've really improved their team that much. Yeah, I think it's a really poor window from Newcastle. Really poor window. I think this was an opportunity potentially to reinforce this team and add a couple players to really bolster up the squad, and they haven't really done so. Spurs. Their notable signings. Include Archie Gray, Timo Werner, Wilson Odobert, Dominic Solanke, and Lucas Bergvall. And then in terms of outgoings, they got rid of a lot of players like Oliver Skip, Joe Rodon, Emerson Royale, Ndombele, Højbjerg, Brian Sessegnon, and a lot of others. So I'd say it's a good window. A good window for Spurs. I think in terms of sales, they had an absolutely fantastic year. Got rid of so much deadwood. Like, those outgoings have been players who have been at the club for far too long and needed to go for years. Finally got rid of all of them and got a couple decent fees for some of them, like Oliver Skip, Emerson, some decent fees in there. So outgoings great. The incomings, I like a lot of their players. For example, Odobert, Archie Gray, Solanke, Bergvall. I like these players. I do think they overpaid for some of them though. Like Solanke definitely overpaid for. Archie Gray I think was quite a big fee. Same with Wilson Odobert. But I like the players. I think they're a good age. They've made their squad a lot younger. They addressed most of their problem areas, like they need a striker. They got, like, even if Solanke was overpaid, I think he's a good player. But I think they still needed another midfielder. Didn't get that. And overall, I think, you know, these players are good players. That's why it's a good window. But I think maybe just spent a little bit too much to warrant going in one window on some of these guys, and maybe could have done with a couple more players, but they did really well, especially in terms of sales. West Ham have been very busy. So West Ham have signed Max Gilman, Somerville, Falkirk, Lewis Gilherm, Carlos Soler, Wan-Bissaka, Guido Rodriguez, and Tadibo. Then they sold quite a bit of deadwood: Aguerd, Benrahma, Down, Zuma, Cornet, Ward-Prowse, and some others. So similar to Spurs, they did very well in terms of sales, but I think they're definitely a contender for winning the window. Got rid of a lot of deadwood players who needed to go. That's good. I think kind of a similar window to Spurs in terms of they did overpay for a couple of players, like Gilman, for example. I thought the fee was a bit excessive. Nicholas Falkirk as well, for his age, was quite a big fee. However, I think where it differs to Spurs is I think they pretty much improved almost every area of their first team, right? Like, they've signed centre backs. He'll be starting most likely. They signed a new right back. He'll start. Two new midfielders. He'll probably start. A new striker. A set of wingers. Like, they've just improved everywhere in that squad. And suddenly you look at that squad, and you would say, yes, this West Ham squad is a lot better than before the window started. They've made it quite a lot more exciting, younger overall as well. Besides Fulham, most of those guys are, in their 20s, which is good. So yeah, I think West Ham have done pretty well this window. Crystal Palace. So Crystal Palace, their notable incomings were Maxim Lacroix, Trevor Chalobah, Ismail Assar, Daichi Kamada, Chadi Riyad, Eddie Nketiah and Matt Turner. In terms of the outgoings, they're quite a bit. Michael Elise and Yogi Madison, the big ones, and then Jordan Ayew, Odson Edward and Sam Johnston. Now, look, Palace, they lost two of their best players. In Yogi Madison and Michael Elise, but look, that was going to happen. They were going to lose some players. They did manage to keep hold of Gay and Ezebo, which is huge, absolutely huge. Now, did they replace Elise? I don't really think so. Like, Ismail Assar, Daichi Kamada are decent players, but I don't think are natural replacements for Elise. Did they replace Anderson? Yes, I think they might have even upgraded Chalobah and Lacroix coming in. That is huge. Eddie Nketiah coming in is decent, although I do think they kind of overpaid for him, and it's a bit unproven. It's a bit of a gamble. But I look at the Palace squad, and I'm like, the trajectory they were on last season, where they ended the year so good and were flying, with these new signings, do I now see them continuing that? I don't think so, to be honest. I think these signings are decent. I think they've signed well at centre back, but I really don't think they've replaced Elise well. Nketiah is a bit of a gamble, but if it works out, will be great. So I think for that reason, I think it's an average window for Palace. Like, got some decent fees for some players, signed some decent players, signed some other, gambles, if you like. But overall, yeah, it's okay. Next up, we have Ipswich, who are actually one of the most active clubs. Now, they signed so many players. Some of the notable guys were Liam Delap, Jacob Greaves, Amari Hutchinson, Calvin Phillips, Jack Clark, Sammy Smallsticks, Dara O'Shea, Murridge, Ogbene, Kajus, Connor Townsend, Ben Johnson. There's more, but we'll stop there. Now, for me, I think, they spent a lot of money. It was like 100 million. I'm torn here. I think I'm gonna go good window. Good window. I think this is a very sort of Luton-esque window from last year. And in the case of, they've bought like players who are deemed kind of too good for the championship, but players who maybe aren't quite good enough for the Prem and are sort of ready to make that step. I think that's exactly what you need to do as a newly promoted side. Like, that's one of the strategies you can take. You can take this strategy, or go for like the experience route. They've signed players like Jack Clark, Sammy Smallsticks, Amari Hutchinson, Jacob Greaves, who are way too good for the championship, had amazing years in the championship, but haven't necessarily done it in the Prem and are a little bit of a risk at this level. They might be good enough, but it equally might not be ready for that step. And that's fine, because if Ipswich go down, they have now like a championship all-star team basically assembled. So I think it's a smart strategy. And if it works out, then they do have a squad who are capable of staying in the Premier League. I don't think with the players they've signed, the squad is probably capable of staying in the Premier League. So that's why I'm not putting them there. But I think they've kind of secured the long-term future of the club with this window. So respect to them. Next up, we have Aston Villa. So Villa have signed Amadou Onana, Ross Barkley, they got Enzo Barangia and Illing Jr. in the swap deal, Jaden Philogene, Ian Martin and Lewis Dobbin. In terms of outgoings, Douglas Luiz, as I mentioned, Musa Diaby left, Cameron Archer, Tim Eric Bonham as well. Now Villa sold really well. They got around 140 million from those outgoings, which is really, really good money. But they started the window off pretty good. You know, got some early signings in. But I was expecting a little bit more from Villa. I think it's an average window. Like, I look at the first team of Villa, and I'm like, has it really improved? I mean, Onana is probably an upgrade on Louise, sure. But then all of their other signings aren't really starters. I mean, Martson might be able to break into the side, but right now Digne is the left back. And then Illing Jr. and Barangia have already been loaned out. Philogene is just a depth option, same with Barkley. So, I'm kind of like, have you really improved your first team? You've added some depth, which I think is needed, but I don't think they've really improved as a team. Lost Diaby as well, but they did get some good money for us. Sold pretty well, added a bit of depth. Yeah, I think it's a pretty average window for that reason. Leicester. So Leicester signed Bilal El-Ghanous, Jordan Ayew, Odson Edouard, Facundo Buonanotte, Oliver Skip, Bobby Daigle, Oliver Reed, and Caleb Coley. In terms of outgoings, the main two were Kelechi Iheanacho and Kieran Dewsbury Hall. Now for me, Leicester are a contender for losing the window. I think, you see, here's the thing, when you're a newly promoted side, I feel like you have two options. You either go for option A, which is the Ipswich route, where you go for your signpost players who are really good at the championship level, and you take the gamble that they're good enough for the Prem. If you go down, you go down, but you have a team who is now good enough for the championship and getting you promoted. Or you go for a route which I feel like, you know, a team like Fulham have gone down, where they sign sort of experienced pros in the Premier League who they know they can rely upon just to sort of get them through, keep them up this year, keep them up for 1 or 2 years, and then as they start to establish themselves as a Premier League club, they can start to be a little bit more expansive and, you know, sign those younger players, etc. And I feel like Leicester have just had a jumble of both, and I'm kind of like, I don't know what the strategy is here, because they've signed those experienced guys in Bobby Reed, a Jordan Ayew, an Odson Edouard. Cool. But then they go ahead and splash out 25 million on a wonder kid from Belgium. They go ahead and spend money on a young centre-back from Atalanta. Facundo Buonanotte comes in on loan, another youngster. And I'm like, what's the strategy here then? Are you gonna go for the Ipswich route? Are you trying to stay up? I don't really know. It feels really sort of scattergun to me. Because, you know, it's great getting, you know, El-Ghanous, a good youngster, but for 25 million, you know, you signed all these other experienced guys. Why don't you just go get some more experienced guys with that money, and who can really help keep you up? Because I don't know if El-Ghanous is going to be ready to keep you up. And I also feel like they did overspend on Oliver Skip. So yeah, they lost Dewsbury Hall as well, lost Iheanacho. Have they really replaced him that well? I don't know. So for that reason, I think they're a contender for losing a window. I just think it's such a scattergun approach. Yeah. Okay, next up we have Brighton, who I believe actually spent the most money in the Prem, which is mad. And okay, get ready, there's a lot. So they signed Matt O'Reilly, Mats FIFA, Jakob Minter, Georgina Rutter, Ferdi Kadiologlu, Bojan Gruda, Ibrahim Osman, Amari Kozia, Dewsbury, and some other youngsters as well. In terms of sales, Billy Gilmore left, Dennis Undas left, Pascal Gross also left. Those were the notable ones, Adam Lallana as well. But yeah, Brighton spent 200 mil, which is mental, absolutely mental, but very contender for one in the window, because I think they spent 200 mil pretty well. Almost all of those signings I love. I think they've spent on good long-term investments. most of those guys are sort of in the 19 to 24 profile in terms of age. Now they did overpay, I think, for a couple players like Jorginho Rutter, for example, has a big old fee, and they have taken a good few gambles on players who maybe aren't proven in the Premier League or anything like that. But they made some real improvements to the first team in almost every position, added a lot of depth to the side. They also didn't really lose a massive player. I mean, Pascal Gross left, but they couldn't really do anything about that. And I think they replaced him pretty well. They kept most of their stars like Joao Pedro, Mitoma, added so many good players. So yeah, they're definitely a contender for winning the window. Chelsea, so we've signed Kieran Dewsbury Hall, Joao Felix, Ronaldo Vega, Mark Gu, Dawson Adebayo, Jadon Sancho, Pedro Neto, and then like a bunch of 15-year-old kids. In terms of outgoings and main ones, Romelu Lukaku, Kepa, Sterling, Angelo, Amari Hutchinson, and a lot of other deadwood. Now in terms of sales, I think we did pretty well. I think we did really well actually. I think we got rid of most of the deadwood and the high wage earners at the club. You know, everyone was talking about like the 40 squad we had. But, you know, now at the end of the video, at the end of the window, we have a fairly reasonable sized squad now. But I still think it's a poor window. I feel like we never really improved the first team in this window. Like, Dawson is a squad player, Mark Gu, squad player, Ronaldo Vega, squad player, Kieran Dewsbury Hall, squad player, and then Neto, Sancho, Felix. I mean, they're all not going to start. One of them will start, sure. I don't think two of them start. Like, so it'll probably be Sancho and Felix who are sort of rotation options. So Neto's the only one who really is the starting player, and I feel like we made a lot of gambles. Neto, Felix, Sancho, very, very risky signings in terms of Neto with the injuries, Felix and Sancho. Can we get them back to their best? I think we didn't overpay too much. I think Neto was a bit steep, but the rest of the players we signed decent fees. So yeah, I think it's a poor window in terms of we didn't really improve our first team, didn't get in a striker as well. So I don't think we are contenders for losing the window because I don't think it was that bad. But yeah, I don't think it was great either. Bournemouth, so Bournemouth signed Evan Nilsson, Julian Alaho, Dean Houghton and Kepa, and then sold Neto and Solanke. I think Bournemouth had a pretty good window. I think they've made some sort of smart gambles on some young players. They've signed very, very young players. Houston, Julian Alaho, very, very young guys who could develop into superstars. Kepa is what it is, decent. I mean, it's probably about the same level as Neto, to be honest. I think that's fine. And then obviously they lost Solanke, but they got really good money for Solanke. Replaced him with Evan Nilsson. Let's see on Evan Nilsson. I mean, in terms of profile, I think, you know, it's probably a decent buy. But, you know, it's a big old fee. We'll see how he does. But overall, I think Bournemouth didn't need too much work to their squad and just added a couple decent youngsters into a squad with a big name striker. Got good money for Solanke. It's a good window. Arsenal. So Arsenal signed Miguel Merino, Ricardo Galavori, Neto and Raheem Sterling. In terms of outgoings, Make Guadaview, Nketiah, Smith Rowe, Ramsdale were the main ones. A couple youngsters as well left the club. Now Arsenal, I think for the first time in a while, sold really well. They got almost 100 million in sales. Good fees for Nketiah, Smith Rowe and Ramsdale. But in terms of the incomings, I mean, I look at the team and I'm like, have you really made yourself that much better from last season? Like, did you sign players which are really going to push you over the line in that title race now? That is hard to do, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna say average. Like, Marino, I think is a good signing. I think he's a good signing. Galliffori, I like him as a player, but was he really necessary? Like, you've got Timber back now. Does he play over Timber? I don't know. You still got Zinchenko there as well. Tomiyasu can play there, so you're pretty well stocked there. Sterling, I don't mind it. Don't mind it as a depth option. But, like, as I said, are those guys really going to be that edge for you in terms of kicking you on? They didn't sign another striker. They did lose a bit of depth in terms of Nketiah, Smith Rowe, etc. But as I said, I think they got decent fees. It's not bad, but it's not great. I think it's pretty average. Manchester United, Man United, pretty active this year. They signed Lenny Yoro, Manuel Ugarte, Joshua Zirkzee, Nusa Masraoui, and Matthias de Ligt. And then he saw quite a few players, McTominay, Wan-Bissaka, Greenwood, and then a bunch of youngsters like Willy Campbell, Hannibal, Palestri, and some other guys as well. I think, you know what, I think it's a good window for United. I think it was a good window for United. I think they improved most areas of the pitch, right? They signed 2 new centre-backs, a full-back, a DM and a striker. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I like a lot of their players. I like some of those guys like Zirkzee, Yoro, de Ligt, Masraoui, Ugarte. I think that's pretty decent. Most of them are a lot younger as well, bringing that average age down, which is good. The only reason they're not in here is because, one, they couldn't get rid of all the deadwood. Players like Anthony are still there, and a lot of other players as well, Ericsson, etc. And I also feel like they didn't necessarily address all of their key areas, like out wide is a little bit of an issue still. Didn't get a winger. The midfield I still think is a bit of a problem. So yeah, I think it was a good window for United. Signed some decent players, but I don't think it's warranting being a contender for winning the window. But it was a good window. Right, Everton. Everton signed O'Brien, Iliman Ndiaye, Eric Bunham, Jesper Lindstrom, Broja, and Oriol Mangala. In terms of outgoings, Amadou Onana, Ben Godfrey, and Neil Mopey were the main ones. Now, I also think it was a good window for Everton. I think it was a good window. They made a profit actually this year, which is really good and good for the club because they needed that. They obviously had to sell somebody big. They went for Onana, but kept Bramthwaite, which I think is the right decision. Got some good money for Onana. Obviously, they want to keep him, but they had to sell and they got pretty good money. I think they got the maximum fee they're really good off. And I think they added some decent players to really bolster that squad, considering the resources they had. I think pound for pound was a pretty good window. Added some depth to the side. Added a couple of players who might be able to really give them that spark in the attack as well. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good window overall. I can't really say won the window because they did lose one of their key players, but still, I think they added to the squad pretty nicely. Brentford signed Fabio Carvalho, Nunes, Van der Berg, Igor Thiago, and then the main outgoing was of course Ivan Toney. Now they spent quite a bit of money. They spent almost £80 million. They did get some decent money for Toney, and that was inevitable, losing Toney. But I think with Brentford, they spent quite a bit of money on some unproven guys like Carvalho and Van der Berg. Could be great, but equally could be poor in the Premier League. We just don't know. Nunes, some young Brazilian goal, and then Igor Thiago, I think they massively overspent on him. So for that reason, I'm gonna say poor window. I'm gonna say poor window for Brentford. I just think that they've taken a big gamble here, spent a lot of money on some of these guys, and it's a big risk, and I'm not sure if it's gonna pay off. Southampton up next. So Southampton have signed Flynn Downs, Harwood Bellis, Cameron Archer, Ben Burton Diaz, Maxwell Cornet, Sugawara, Ugochukwu, Lallana, and some others. In terms of outgoings, Stuart Armstrong, Jay Adams, Carlos Alvarez, a couple other guys as well. So yeah, I mean Southampton made some of those loans permanent from the Championship. Gould, Downs, Harwood Bellis, whatever. they've made a couple decent signings, I think, for players who are maybe just about good enough for the Prem and also really good for the Champ. If they go down like Cameron Archer, Everton, Diaz, and then you know what? I don't think it's too bad. I think it's pretty average. Like there's been a decent amount of money bolstered up the squad on some younger guys who kind of went down the Ipswich route, but a little bit more expansive, like a little bit more proven players, but still some guys who could help them out. I don't think they've really done enough to stay up in the division, but I think they've done decent to at least give themselves a chance. Next up we have Fulham. Fulham have brought in Emil Smith-Rowe, Yogi Madison, Xander Burge, Reece Nelson, Jorge Kukwena, I don't know how you say his name, and Ryan Sessington. And then the big outgoings, Joao Polina, Bobby Reed, Willian, Tosin, Adrabayo and Tim Ream. I think it's a good window for Fulham. I think it's a really good window for Fulham. Now they did sell quite a few key players, but they got really good money for Joao Polina, and I think they really made the squad younger and refreshed it. You know, those older guys went out, like your Williams, like your Bobby Rees, like your Reams, and they got in those younger guys, and I think they replaced all of their players pretty well. Xander Burge for Polina isn't too bad. Reece Nelson for Reed is not too bad either. Smith-Rowe for Willian, pretty good. Yuki Anderson for Tosin Adrabayo, again pretty good. So yeah, I think Fulham have done well. They've replaced their key players nicely, and yeah, a pretty good window. I can't really put it in wonder window because similar to Everton, I mean they lost quite a few key players. So you know, when you lose that many key players, I can't really say, oh, you had an amazing window, but still, I think they've replaced them pretty well. Next up, we have Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest have signed Alex Moreno, Elliot Anderson, Milenkovic, Carlos Miguel, Morato, and James Ward-Prowse. In terms of outgoings, Musa Niakate, Oriol Mangala, Remo Freulo, Joe Worrell, Matt Turner. Yeah, sold quite a few deadwood, which was necessary. They didn't sign 500 players, which is good. And I think they made some solid additions. I think it's a good window for Forest. I think it's a good window. You know, Milenkovic, I think is a nice player at the back. Elliot Anderson has started off pretty well. Moreno, I really like at left back. They didn't get their striker. You know, they were chasing Jimenez and Nketiah. They didn't get him, which is a bit of a blemish. But to be honest, I don't think they really needed one anyway. Yeah, I think overall a decent window from Forest. I'm not sure they've massively improved their team, which is why they can't be a contender for winning the window. But I think they did pretty well. I think they made a couple decent additions to the team. Okay, and finally we have Wolves, who have signed Andre, Rodrigo Gomez, Jurgen Strand Larsen, Carlos Forbes, Pedro Lima, Tommy Doyle, and Sam Johnston. In terms of outgoings, the main ones, Fabio Silva, Daniel Potence, Pedro Nello, and Max Kilman. Now in terms of sales, I mean, they did incredible. They lost 2 key players, but they got incredible money. I mean, 60 mil for Neto, 40 for Kilman. They're laughing to the bank there, Wolves. They did amazing. But I don't think they really replaced them that well or used that money at all. You know, the replacement for Neto, Carlos Forbes, came in very late. Young player, could do well, but is a bit of a gamble. They didn't sign a left centre back, which is pretty concerning. Not replacing Gilman. They did make some decent signings though. Andre, I think, is a great signing. Rodrigo Gomez, Strand Larsen looks amazing. Sam Johnston's alright as well. I think that sort of averages out to an average window in my opinion. Like, yeah, made some good sales, but didn't really use that funds too well, but made a couple decent signings in there. Right then, so let's decide who won the window and lost the window. So let's start with lost the window. It's between Newcastle and Leicester for me. It's tough, but I'm gonna push up Leicester. I think Newcastle lost the window. I just think that they were pushing for a centre back. They were pushing for Gay, didn't get him. They had alternatives like apparently Tapsoba, Desassi were linked, didn't get them either. They didn't sign any centre back besides Lloyd Kelly. and really Lloyd Kelly is the only player they signed to, you know, actually make a contribution to the first team, which is pretty poor in my opinion. I think, given their struggles last season with depth, they needed to sign a couple more players, so I think it was a poor window from Newcastle, and I think they had the worst window in the Prem. In terms of who won the window, I'm gonna drop West Ham just because I think they did overspend on a couple of those guys, and you know, a couple of them I think like I'm a bit bullish on, like not too sure about. So it's between Brighton and Manchester City, and for me, just because I think their signings are a little bit more guaranteed to work, I'm dropping Brighton down. I think Man City's signings compared to Brighton are pretty much guaranteed to work out. Brighton's, they spent a lot of money on some players who are gambles, will probably work out, but they could equally flop and not work out. Whereas Man City, in Savio and Gundogan, I think are pretty much guaranteed to work, spent low fees, made a massive profit in terms of sales as well. Yeah, Manchester City for me won the window this year. Newcastle lost it. Do you agree with that? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in another